Could a single pact between a modest West African nation and a global superpower truly shatter centuries of Western dominance? This is not just another headline to ignore. The sweeping agreement just unveiled by Burkina Faso and China may rewrite the very rules of power on the African continent. For more than 100 years, Western hands have shaped Africa's fate, tightening their grip through colonial legacies and economic control. From the Berlin Conference of the late 19th century, where European powers carved up Africa as if it were a cake, to the present day, outside powers have dictated terms. But with the stroke of a pen in 2024, Burkina Faso and China have launched a direct challenge to that old order, an accord so sweeping that Western leaders in Paris, Washington, and London are scrambling behind closed doors. Their historic stronghold over African economies and politics is suddenly at risk of unraveling. Do not be fooled. This is no mere gesture of goodwill or symbolic partnership. It is a calculated move, one aimed at restoring sovereignty and giving Africa the power to shape its own destiny. For Burkina Faso, so often dismissed as a minor, landlocked state, this deal is nothing short of a declaration. The era of Western rules is ending. What rides on this moment? If Africa misses this window, it risks remaining trapped in old cycles of debt, dependency, and foreign manipulation. But if the gamble pays off, it could spell a new age of prosperity and autonomy, one where Africans seize the chance to reclaim dignity, reverse exploitation, and build generational wealth on their own terms. So, how did this unexpected alliance form? And what does it portend for Africa's future and the world's balance of power? Let us pull back the curtain and examine the forces now reshaping history. To understand what is truly at stake, we must first look at the forces and frustrations that brought Burkina Faso and China together. Their unlikely partnership did not appear overnight. It is rooted in deep historical wounds, calculated strategies, and the search for new beginnings. Why would China choose Burkina Faso, a landlocked nation long dismissed by Western powers, as the spark for an African revolution? To grasp the answer, we must confront Burkina Faso's wounded history. For more than 100 years, colonial overlords stripped away dignity and autonomy. Even after so-called independence, Western governments forged new shackles, dictating currency, installing puppet rulers, and siphoning resources with impunity. The CFA franc was never a tool for local prosperity. It was a mechanism for draining Burkina Faso to enrich foreign treasuries. For decades, French corporations held a monopoly over Burkina Faso's vital gold mines, extracting vast wealth from the earth and leaving little behind but environmental scars and impoverished communities. Trade routes were controlled by foreign companies, while exports like cotton and livestock were purchased at rock-bottom prices and sold overseas for huge profits. Under this order, Western corporations monopolized mines, controlled trade routes, and engineered dependency on foreign aid. True power over Burkina Faso's destiny rested in Paris, London, or Washington, not Ouagadougou. Generations of Burkinabe grew up believing economic survival required Western favor, while their gold, cotton, and sweat fattened distant economies. For example, in the 1980s, a series of structural adjustment programs imposed by the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank forced Burkina Faso to open its markets, cut public spending, and privatize state assets. These policies, designed in foreign capitals, led to decades of stagnation and a brain drain as talented young people left for opportunities abroad. But now the ground is shifting. Captain Ibrahim Traoré has emerged as a symbol of defiance and hope. He leads with a vision of sovereignty, determined to break the old chains. In Ouagadougou, he stood with a Chinese delegation and signed the momentous Ouagadougou Accord. This was more than a contract. It was a public burial for the old order. Why is Burkina Faso poised for this role? Unlike many African peers, it remains less entangled in the web of Western multinationals. Its economy is not dominated by foreign giants. This relative openness combined with a fierce appetite for innovation, gives Burkina Faso the freedom to forge daring new partnerships on its own terms. Burkina Faso's history is rich with examples of resistance. In the 1980s, Thomas Sankara, a charismatic leader, nationalized land and resources, launched literacy campaigns, and encouraged women's rights. Although his reforms were cut short, his spirit of self-reliance endures. Today, the people of Burkina Faso remember these lessons, fueling a readiness for bold action. Enter China, offering a blueprint unlike any before. Rather than dictating policy or enforcing cultural submission, China promises partnership, not plunder. Their approach is built on mutual respect and shared development, not the extraction and manipulation that defined Western involvement. Instead of imposing political puppets or carving up the land, China comes to build, side by side, with benefits flowing both ways and a vision that stretches far into the future. In Ethiopia, China financed and built Africa's first modern electric railway, linking the capital Addis Ababa to the port of Djibouti. This project slashed transportation times for Ethiopian exports, boosted trade, and created thousands of local jobs. Similar projects could now spring up across Burkina Faso, spurring an era of connectivity and opportunity. Understanding this moment is essential. This is not another foreign power imposing its will. It is Africa's bold move to reclaim its narrative, seize economic control, and shape its own destiny. Mistaking these signals, falling for recycled propaganda, or assuming history repeats could cost another generation its hopes, its wealth, and its sovereignty. But what exactly does this new accord promise? And why are Western capitals so alarmed? Let us examine the bold details now shaking the global order. The Ouagadougou Accord is no ordinary agreement. Its terms are designed to upend decades of Western dominance and set a precedent for how Africa engages with the world. The Ouagadougou Accord is not merely a trade deal. It is a manifesto for a new African era. What makes this pact between Burkina Faso and China so transformative? To begin, China has promised the largest investment in Burkina Faso's history. Billions in funding will overhaul industries, modernize agriculture, and seed technological hubs where there were only empty fields. Imagine rural villages buzzing with high-tech machinery and entire sectors producing goods for global export. Picture, for instance, a village like Koudougou. Today, young people leave for cities or abroad in search of work. But under the accord, investment flows into local textile factories, powered by renewable energy. With training programs supported by Chinese engineers, the town becomes a center for garment production, exporting clothing to markets in Asia and Europe. Yet the ambitions run deeper. The agreement calls for the construction of sprawling solar farms, vast enough to power Burkina Faso and its closest neighbors. New trade corridors are being carved across the continent, designed to bypass Western-controlled shipping routes. For the first time, Burkina Faso's exports will move freely, without tolls, barriers, or the need to appease colonial powers. Perhaps most radical is how the deal severs the grip of Western currencies. Financial transactions will be conducted in Chinese yuan and a proposed gold-backed African currency. This move breaks Burkina Faso's dependency on the dollar, euro, or franc, currencies long used to dominate rather than empower. No longer will the nation's prosperity hang on decisions made in Paris, London, or Washington. Security and autonomy lie at the agreement's heart. China has pledged advanced military training, encrypted communications, and joint ventures in space research. Burkina Faso stands to gain not just stronger borders, but entry into the frontiers of science and technology. Imagine Burkina-based scientists collaborating with Chinese counterparts on satellite launches, or students from Ouagadougou earning scholarships to Beijing's top universities. These are not distant dreams. They are written into the Accord's action plans. China, in return, secures a vital ally and access to strategic resources. Burkina Faso receives capital, expertise, and, crucially, sovereignty. The deal's language ensures mutual respect. No dictation from Beijing, no puppet governments, and no resource extraction without fair compensation. This is not exploitation, but partnership, a relationship built on equality and trust. If this model works, it could shatter Western monopolies and inspire waves of African independence. But if it fails, it risks trapping another generation in cycles of dependency and lost opportunity. With the ink barely dry, the world is already bracing for aftershocks. Every move made under the Ouagadougou Accord threatens to redraw the global map. As the world reels from breaking news, the old global order teeters. Could Africa truly be on the verge of leading the game it has so long been forced to play? In Paris, tension thickens the air. French officials, once assured of their dominance over West Africa, sequester themselves in shadowy rooms, their voices tight with dread. Across the Channel, the halls of Brussels echo with hurried footsteps as emergency summits are called. In Washington, policy experts and intelligence chiefs work through the night, scrambling to craft a response to what many now whisper is the gravest challenge to Western supremacy since the days of decolonization. Leaked dispatches paint an ominous picture. The Burkina Faso-China alliance is no mere partnership. It is an earthquake shaking the foundations of the Western-led world order. Diplomats call it a tectonic shift. Old rules are crumbling. For the first time in living memory, the West is not in control. But these tremors do not stop at embassies or ministries. All across Africa, the ripples become waves. In Mali, Niger, and Guinea, leaders speak openly of following Burkina Faso's path, emboldened by the vision of true sovereignty. The dream of a unified, economically independent African bloc, fortified by alliances with the East, now feels close enough to touch. Western countermeasures begin, but they land with a thud. Sanctions, once able to break smaller nations, now bounce off the armor of this new coalition. Propaganda falters against populations hungry for dignity and agency. Covert operations, previously the ace up Western sleeves, find themselves stymied by a continent more united and resilient than ever before. A historical parallel can be seen in the mid-20th century, when the non-aligned movement emerged as newly independent countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America sought to chart their own course. Yet, unlike in the past, today's African nations possess far greater economic leverage, technological capability, and a keen awareness of the pitfalls of dependency. For the first time in centuries, Africa is no longer a pawn on the board. It rises as the queen, wielding new power, choosing its partners, and setting the tempo of global affairs. The stakes have never been higher. If the West cannot adapt, it risks irrelevance in a world where Africa and its allies dictate the future. Yet, danger shadows opportunity. A single misstep could open the door to chaos or renewed exploitation. But if this alliance holds, it promises a future of growth, power, and a rewriting of the world's rules. The old game is ending. Can the new one deliver on its bold promise? Across the continent, anticipation and anxiety mingle. Every side waits to see who will make the next move and what it will cost. This is more than politics. It is about harvests, electric light in forgotten villages, and the right to chart one's own destiny. Step past the headlines, and you will see change sprouting from the ground up. New factories rise from red earth, offering jobs and skills to families who once knew only hardship. Energy grids flicker to life, sending power into homes that have waited for decades in darkness. Take, for instance, the story of Bintu, a farmer in southern Burkina Faso. For most of her life, she relied on unpredictable rains and outdated tools. But through the new partnership, she gains access to drip irrigation, drought-resistant seeds, and a local cooperative that sells produce directly to city supermarkets. Her children attend a solar-powered school equipped with laptops and internet, connecting them to a world of knowledge. Digital trade networks now connect rural markets to distant cities and beyond. Goods, money, and ideas flow with a freedom unimaginable just years ago. Across wide fields, agricultural life is transforming. Where once stagnant yields and unreliable rains ruled, technology now brings smart irrigation, high-yield seeds, and farmer-led cooperatives. For the first time in generations, African youth and professionals lead the charge. Software developers, engineers, and creative minds are crafting solutions for African challenges on their own terms. Classrooms brim with new learning tools, granting students and teachers access to global knowledge once blocked by distance or poverty. Perhaps most powerful is the quiet revolution in the countryside. Farmers, long preyed upon by middlemen, now negotiate fair prices through transparent networks. No longer do they watch the fruits of their labor vanish for pennies while outsiders profit. Economic freedom begins at the farm gate and ripples outward. The ink on this deal is not just a signature, it is a declaration. It signals the end of forced dependency and the first page of self-driven prosperity. With each handshake and every agreement, the continent moves away from the shadow of exploitation and steps into the sunlight of genuine partnership. Yet this new path is not safe from danger. The old powers will not yield quietly. Already, efforts are underway to divide, distract, and sabotage. Only unity, vigilance, and shared purpose can defend and multiply these gains. Above all, remember the force of narrative. For centuries, outsiders wrote Africa's story, casting it as a land of crisis or charity. Now, Africa seizes the pen, scripting its own saga of ambition, resistance, and renewal. To miss the meaning of this shift is to miss a transformation that comes once in a generation. For those who see the moment and step forward, there is a rare chance to help shape Africa's new dawn and to own a share in its future. But what practical steps can ensure this new partnership delivers on its promise? First, local governments must insist on transparency. Agreements must be made public, with citizens informed and able to hold leaders accountable. Civil society groups, farmers' unions, youth collectives, women's organizations must have a seat at the table, ensuring projects meet real needs. Second, education must be prioritized. Scholarships, vocational training, and technology transfer agreements must become routine, equipping the next generation to maintain and expand new infrastructure. Third, regional cooperation is vital. Burkina Faso's neighbors can be invited to join new trade corridors, harmonize regulations, and share best practices. The creation of a regional development bank managed by Africans could finance homegrown projects and reduce reliance on outside lenders. Fourth, environmental safeguards must be set from the start. Solar farms and factories should be built with an eye towards sustainability, protecting land and water for future generations. Finally, the media must be empowered to tell the real story. Local journalists, filmmakers, and writers should document successes and setbacks honestly, countering both Western propaganda and empty triumphalism. As this chapter of history closes, ask yourself, will you remain an observer or become a participant? The world is watching Africa's next move. The choices made now will echo for generations to come. The pen is now in African hands. Will you help write the next lines? This is not a footnote in history. It is the start of a new chapter unfolding before your eyes. For too many years, others spoke for Africa, spinning tales to serve their own interests and clouding the truth. Now, Africa stands poised to steer her own story, making intentional, bold choices that reshape her destiny. The partnership between Burkina Faso and China is more than a simple agreement. It is a bold statement. It proclaims that Africa refuses to be boxed in by dependency or the dictates of distant powers. This is the sunrise of sovereignty, where cooperation is anchored in respect and mutual gain, and the future is crafted by Africans for Africans. Yet new power brings new risks. If we turn away or remain passive, old traps may return. Exploitation with new faces, cycles of manipulation dressed in fresh rhetoric. Staying vigilant is not just a safeguard, it is the cornerstone of lasting independence and real progress. This story belongs to you too. Every choice to learn, to speak, to share the truth helps shape the Africa of tomorrow. Will you watch as history unfolds, or will you step forward, informed and engaged? With every moment of awareness, the boundaries of Africa's sovereignty expand. Remember, the future is not written by those who look away. It is forged by those who question, who listen, and who stand up for a narrative that is Africa's alone. The next chapter is being written now. Will you be just an onlooker, or will you help shape the future?